I am Lena Whitmore, 33 years old. That Sunday evening, over dinner, I said just one sentence, Mom. I need to borrow $2,000 to keep my apartment. No one said a word. My brother, Marcus, laughed short and cold. His wife, Haley, looked up. Her voice so sweet it sounded fake. 2,000? Haven't you learned how to manage your life better yet? My mother set down her wine glass. Her gaze heavy. Lena, you need to take care of yourself. Marcus is about to have a baby. Don't bother him anymore. The room was brightly lit. Yet inside me there was only darkness. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I understood that in this house, kindness had a price. And that night, I knew exactly what it was worth. $2,000. They didn't know. I didn't need that money at all. I was only testing to see who in my family still had a heart. And inside my purse that evening lay something that could change the position of every person in that room. Before I tell you what happened after that dinner, tell me, where are you watching from? I want to know which city and which country you're in. If you've ever been made to feel small by your own family, hit like and subscribe. Not to support me, but to remind yourself that self-respect is also a form of love. Because maybe, somewhere in the world, there's someone just like me sitting at a dinner table, smiling to hide a wound. Now, let's go back to where the real test began. Charleston that day felt as if it had been melted. Sunlight poured down onto the parking lot behind the dental clinic, reflecting off the car windows until everything was a blinding white. I sat in the old Civic, the air conditioner blowing humid heat like breath trapped inside a plastic bag. The smell of fluoride and antiseptic from the clinic clung to my collar. I opened my phone to kill a few minutes between shifts. A notification popped up. A single line. Congratulations. Jackpot winner. I blinked, thinking the glare had made me see things. The number next to it was absurdly long, $88 million. I did not cry out. I only felt my heartbeat change tempo, slow down, and grow heavy. I looked through the glass. A sparrow landed on the trash can, pecked at crumbs, then flew away. The wind did not blow. I drew a deep breath as if someone had just removed a rock from my chest. Every sound, the static on the radio, the distant whir of drills from inside the clinic seemed very, very far away. For the first time in years, I did not feel tired, only a strange calm, like a lake suddenly holding still. A second ping sounded almost immediately. Sender name Mom Brenda. Marcus' car broke down. Send him 200 before tonight. No period. No thank you, just a short. Clear. In familiar command. I watched the screen. The two numbers sat 4 lines apart. One was $88 million. The other was $200. Both demanded a decision from me. I sat still, sunlight slanting across the steering wheel, reflecting onto my hands. The smell of burning plastic and sweat made an unpleasant mix. I flipped the phone face down and let it lie on my lap. No reply. Not out of anger, but because for the first time, I wanted to see what would happen when silence became the answer. The engine started, the motor vibrating with a hoarse purr. I did not go to the lottery office, nor did I drive straight home. I opened a delivery app and accepted a small order. The Civic slid out of the lot and merged into the thick afternoon. And I began to learn how to keep a secret by saying nothing. I did not answer the 200 messages. I wanted to see, when the Lena cash machine fell silent, what they would say. 2 days later, I sat in a glass office on the 28th floor, looking down at the ribbon of cars winding through downtown Charleston. No more smell of fluoride, only the scent of polished walnut and freshly ground coffee. Attorney Harland, salt and pepper hair. Slow-spoken, never wasting words, set a thick file in front of me. If you want to live quietly going forward, he said, don't let your name appear in any newspaper. We will set up an anonymous limited liability company, The entire prize will be under that legal entity. And choose to take a lump sum? I nodded. The documents were as thick as a novel. Nobody wanted to write. Each time I signed, the pen made a small click like a latch. 3 days later, my private account showed a balance of $45,460,000. I stared at it for exactly 10 seconds, then locked the screen. No photos. No messages to anyone. The silence of that number calmed me more than any congratulations ever could. The next afternoon, when I returned to my apartment, there was an orange envelope taped right in the middle of the door. I tore it open and noticed that my rent would increase by $300 starting next month. 6 months ago, that amount would have thrown me into panic, forcing me to count every noodle pack. Today, it only made me stand still for a long moment. Watching the sunlight spill across the hallway in bright patches, the smell of fried shallots drifted up from the apartment below. Mixing with the scent of old paper, I remembered when I was 18, my mother standing in my room holding a savings book with $5,000, the money I had earned from 3 years of side jobs, and saying, "Marcus needs seed money to start his business. You're smart. You can take care of yourself." That memory flickered like a scratched film, leaving a sharp ache in my chest. I folded the notice and put it in the drawer. No reaction. No message. I only wanted to see if this time I did not cry for help. Would they come to me out of worry? Or only when they needed something? On Saturday night, with rain drizzling, I stopped at an old gas station on King Street. A neon billboard blinked red, reflecting in puddles. I stood under the awning. The smell of petrol mixed with the rain was cold but strangely comforting. A minivan pulled up beside me. The rear door open. A young woman draped a thin coat over her sleeping child. Watching that, I understood money does not make you stronger. It simply lets you choose what you will no longer tolerate. I took out my phone and called Harland. He answered, his voice steady and deep. "I need one more thing," I said. "My family is about to sell grandmother's house. I want to protect my share. And maybe test them one last time." There was a soft laugh on the other end. Half surprised, half understanding. "You want me to set a clean trap. I want them to price out their own love." The rain fell harder, drumming on the tin roof. It tilted my face up, and a faint smile spread across my lips. For the first time, I felt peaceful thinking about the fight. On Monday morning, I would lay the first brick of a plan built on silence. But before that, I had to return to the place where, at Aten, I had lost $5,000 this time, armed with a new measure boundaries. The next morning, Beaufort was veiled in mist. I drove down the dirt road that had once led me to school, where 2 rows of oak trees arched over like an old gate. My mother's house still sat at the end of the street. Dark brown roof tiles, walls stained with patches of damp. The upstairs window where I used to study now bore a faded for sale sign. I turned off the engine, but didn't step out right away. Moist air rose from the ground, carrying the smell of wet grass and old paint. What I felt wasn't nostalgia, but a chill spreading down my spine, as if memories I thought were buried had begun to wake. Back then, I worked as a cashier at the supermarket near school, plus 2 other jobs tutoring at night and gardening on weekends. I saved every paycheck, every tip, tucking them into a green-covered savings book with a shaky, handwritten title, College Fund, L. Each time I flipped a page, I felt hope not, because the balance grew, but because it was the only thing that truly belonged to me. One early summer afternoon, I brought the book into the living room to show off. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, glinting across the wooden table where my mother sat with Marcus. I said, voice trembling with pride, "Mom, I've saved enough for my first semester." Marcus looked up, his smile bright. "That's awesome. Mom, I need to talk to you too. Jay's record label is opening a studio, and I just need a little more capital." Before I could say another word, my mother set down her teacup, Marcus needs to start. He's a man, he deserves a chance to try. But that's my tuition money. She looked at me, eyes soft but unyielding. You're smarter. Lena, you'll find another way. It sounded like praise, but it cut across my chest like a blade. That night, I sat in my room, listening to my mother's footsteps in the hall. The door opened, and the scent of her old perfume drifted in. I'm only borrowing it, she said softly. When Marcus releases his first album, he'll pay it back. I nodded, not because I believed her, but because I couldn't speak. She placed a hand on my shoulder, her palm cold. Don't make me feel guilty, sweetheart. When she left, I watched her shadow stretch down the hallway, blending with the light from Marcus's room where rap music pounded. Friends laughed, and the smell of pizza filled the air. I sat curled up, the savings book open, my mother's fingerprints still visible on the page. The words college fund blurred beneath my tears. I understood then, in that house, love wasn't shared evenly. It followed the direction of the noise. That night, I stood outside Marcus's door. Green studio lights flickered from within, bass thrumming against my chest. He was recording, chanting with passion. We rise, we shine. Beside him, my mother sat on a chair, smiling with pride, and me standing outside, holding the crumpled acceptance letter in my hands. I heard her laughter and the clinking of glasses. In that small house, I realized I didn't belong to the celebration. I stepped back, gently closed the door as if closing off a piece of my youth. From that night on, I learned silence, not because I was weak, but because silence was how I survived without shattering. That afternoon, I sat in my small Charleston apartment. The glow from my laptop lit my face as the inbox displayed the line University of South Carolina, Alumni Donation Program. I laughed, not bitterly. I remembered the first check Marcus promised to send, and my mother's temporary loan. Now I understood fairness isn't something others return to you. It's something you build with your own hands. I closed the laptop, stood up, and made coffee. The aroma mingled with the faint drizzle tapping against the window. The $5,000 memory had become the most valuable lesson of my life, that sometimes you must lose what you deserved to learn how to create what no one can take away. Tomorrow morning, I will return with a new role, not as the daughter who lost $5,000, but as the woman who will recalculate every debt this family owes. Friday afternoon, while I was typing a report for Harland, my phone buzzed softly. The sender's name appeared, Mom Brenda. The message was brief, written as if to an employee. Not a daughter dinner this Sunday. Marcus has good news. No emoji. No small talk. No. Are you free? I read it 3 times. It had been almost 2 months since Marcus's birthday dinner the last time I visited home. Maybe they thought I'd forgotten or cooled off. I smiled faintly. The truth was, I wasn't angry, just observing. And this message arrived at the perfect moment. If a test needed a stage, Sunday dinner would be the ideal one. Sunday morning, I woke earlier than usual. No dress. No perfume. Just jeans. A white shirt. And my hair tied back the same Lena they were used to looking down on. To make the test feel natural. Before leaving, I opened my notebook and wrote the first line. An observer doesn't need to speak, only to watch long enough. On the drive home, Charleston was quiet. The wind carried the salt of the Ashley River, mixed with the smell of BBQ smoke from the neighborhood across the bridge. I glanced in the mirror and saw that I was no longer the girl who once bowed her head to ask for $5,000. Now I was someone who chose silence, but with purpose. When the Civic stopped in front of my mother's gate, the late afternoon sun spilled through the trees, soft and golden. I took a deep breath. The test began. The door opened. The smell of roasted meat and tomato sauce drifted out. Brenda stood in the kitchen, apron spotless. Lipstick, a gentle pink, her signal that she was playing the role of kind mother. "Lena, you're here. It's been so long since we've seen you." I nodded. Setting my bag on a chair, Haley smiled from the dining table, her grin gleaming like the wine glass in her hand. "Marcus is going to be a dad. Can you believe it? Mom and Dad are thrilled." I turned toward Marcus. He touched Haley's belly lightly, his eyes full of triumph. "We're thinking of throwing a small party, but we'll have to keep it modest, still paying off a few studio loans." I smiled gently. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." My mother looked up, squinting slightly, her voice laced with a soft, fake concern. "And you?" "Lena, still in that same apartment. You should think about settling down." The air thickened like syrup. I could hear the ceiling fan spinning and the quiet clinking of cutlery. The dining table gleamed, as if it had never held any wounds except mine. When dessert arrived, I set my spoon down and spoke evenly. "Mom, I need to ask you something. My landlord just raised the rent by $300. If I don't pay by the end of the week, they might cancel the lease. I need to borrow around $2,000 to keep it." Silence. Marcus leaned back, chuckling. "2,000, Lena. Are you still at that same job? Or are you just spending faster than you earn?" Haley stirred her ice cream with her spoon, lips curling faintly. "Everyone goes through hard times." "Right. Honey." My mother placed her wine glass down, fingers interlacing. "Lena, you know, Marcus is about to have a baby. The family's helping him right now. You don't have a family of your own, so your expenses aren't much. You'll have to learn to manage on your own." Her words were soft, but each one slid like a blade across the table. I looked straight at her and nodded slightly. "I understand. I was just asking. Thank you." "Mom." No one noticed my fingers tapping lightly on the tabletop. 1, 2, 3, marking time. Dinner went on, and I began memorizing every word they said, every glance they shared. They didn't know that when I bowed my head and said thank you, I was actually recording every word as evidence. After dinner, everyone cleared the table. Marcus turned on the TV, the voice of a sports announcer echoing through the room. I stood in the corner of the kitchen, washing dishes. The warm water and soap bubbles climbed over my hands. Mom came beside me, speaking softly. "Don't think I favor Marcus. He just needs motivation. You're strong already." I tilted my head slightly, offering no reply. She thought it was comfort, but I heard the truth beneath it. Those who endure will always be tested. Haley walked by, placing a hand on my shoulder, smiling right on the edge between politeness and pretense. "You always make everyone worry." "Lena, but are you okay?" I looked at the reflection in the fridge door, my face mirrored beside hers. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking." In that reflection, for the first time, I saw it clearly. Distance isn't about space. It's about trust. When I left, the Charleston night was heavy with mist. The house lights glowed dim yellow, like old memories. I looked back once my mother was laughing with Marcus by the window, Haley resting her head on his shoulder. I quietly stepped off the porch, opened my phone, and typed a note. Test result. Preliminary. No one asked why I wasn't smiling. I started the car. The engine blended into the still night. In the glove compartment was the small notebook I always carried. On its first page, I had written, "An observer doesn't need to speak, only to watch long enough." Now, I turned to the second page and added family 0 points. I folded the notebook shut and looked into the rearview mirror. The house faded into the mist behind me. I smiled, not out of joy, but because the first test had ended exactly as expected. That night, I opened the notebook again and wrote the first line of the exam. Family, 0 points. And by morning, I would start grading each of them. Charleston at night was strangely quiet. I sat on the sofa, my apartment bathed in the soft amber light of a desk lamp. Outside, the wind slipped through the door, crack just enough to make the bill on the table tremble. On my phone, the screen stayed lit, my contacts list open, showing 3 names clearly: Tasha, Kevin, and Mom. I didn't plan to call my mother. At least, not yet. Tonight, I just wanted to know, among all the people I once reached out to help, who would reach back for me. I opened my notebook. The words "Family 0 points" were still wet with ink. Right beneath it, I wrote "Test no. To gratitud." I dialed the first number. The phone rang 4 times before Tasha's voice came through, breathless, with a game show blaring in the background. "Hey, Lena, why are you calling this late?" "What's up?" I swallowed, trying to sound normal. "Hey, how are you? I've hit a little snag. My landlord raised the rent. I just need to borrow $2,000 just for a week. I'll pay you back." Silence. Then an awkward laugh. "Oh, girl, I just paid for Keon's braces, nearly $800. Things are tight right now." I heard dishes clinking. Then a man's voice shouting from the kitchen. "Hey, where's the beer?" Tasha replied. "1 sec," then turned back to me, her voice suddenly lighter. "But you know what? There's that loan place on Main Street, super quick approval. It's a little pricey, but you'll get the cash right away. Try that if you're desperate." The words were casual, but they hit like a pebble skipping across a still lake. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, thanks, Tasha. I understand." When the call ended, I kept the phone against my ear, listening to the muffled laughter and TV noise on her end. In my apartment, the only sound was the ticking clock. I dialed the next number. Uncle Kevin's voice burst through, loud and cheerful as ever. "Lena, how have you been? I'm watching the game, it's getting wild." I forced a small laugh. "I'm not interrupting." "Am I? I'm a bit short on rent this month. I need to borrow about $2,000, just temporarily." A long pause. The TV behind him roared. Touchdown, the crowd cheered. Then he exhaled. "Oh, Lena, times are hard. Sweetheart, everyone's struggling. If I had extra, I'd help in a heartbeat." His tone was still kind. He still called me sweetheart. But beneath it was a distance colder than the night wind. I looked at my hand, the same hand that once held his in the hospital emergency room 2 years ago. The same hand that now trembled slightly as it held the phone. My voice dropped. "Zofter. Now I understand. Uncle, enjoy the game." I hung up. The screen went black. My reflection shimmered faintly on the glass. The room was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat steady. Slow. Dull. I placed the phone on the table, eyes fixed on the dark screen. 2 calls. 2 refusals. Both with the same tone, pity wrapped in avoidance. I remembered every person I'd helped Tasha. I let her and her 2 kids stay with me for 6 months. Uncle Kevin. I stayed up all night by his hospital bed. And now, they were on the other side of the line, in houses full of light. Laughter. An apology spoken just to end the conversation. I didn't cry. I only heard the wind seeping through the window, carrying the damp scent of night. I opened my notebook to a new page. Test result. Gratitude 0 points. I set the pen down but didn't close the book, because another line was forming in my mind. I wrote it slowly, each word carved into the paper. No one owes me anything, but I don't owe them anymore. Either. The yellow light reflected off the page, my hand trembling slightly like ripples on water. The room stayed quiet. No phone calls. No messages. Only my breathing and the clock ticking second by second. I looked up at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "Is the test over now?" Then answered silently, "No. This is the grading." I stood and walked to the window. Charleston lay beneath a sea of darkness, streetlights glimmering on the river like shattered mirrors. I looked down at my palm. A faint smear of blue ink still marked the words I'd just written. Tonight. I didn't call my mother. I didn't need to. I already had the answer. The wind stirred the curtain gently. I took a deep breath. Shoulders easing. My voice came out low and steady. Tomorrow, I'll repay every debt with silence. I turned off the lamp. The room sank into darkness. Outside, the clock struck 12. One day ended. And a plan began. The hallway of Harmony Senior Lofts was empty. The fluorescent lights flickered. Somewhere, the scent of roasted corn drifted through a door crack. I stood in front of room 3B. My palms damp with sweat. The elevator was out of order. So I'd climbed 3 flights of stairs. Maybe that was why my heart was still racing. I wasn't sure if Miss Persons, Evelyn, was still awake. She used to be my old neighbor, the only one who ever knocked on my door when she heard me arguing with my mother. Now, in the middle of the night, I came to her again not to ask for money, but to hear the voice of someone who wouldn't judge me. I took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. The door opened. Warm light spilled out, along with the scent of cornmeal and cinnamon. "Lena, you've lost weight," she said softly, asking nothing more, only stepping aside so I could come in. Her apartment was small but bright. A cotton cloth covered the dining table, and an old radio played an Etta James soul track. On the table, a teacup still steamed. I sat down, hands clasped tightly together. "Ms. Evelyn, last night, I went back to my mother's," I told her, slowly, about the dinner, the refusals, and the 2 phone calls in the dark. She didn't interrupt, only nodded now and then. Her eyes kind, yet deep like a lake when the wind has just stopped. When I finished, she simply slid the teacup closer. "Drink up. Sweetheart, warm yourself first, then we'll think." After a quiet moment, she stood and opened a drawer. A small envelope emerged. "Rent money," written on it in purple ink. "I don't have much," she said, "but if you need it, take it. Money can be earned again. But once you lose your pride, it's hard to find it back." I looked at the envelope, then at her hand, thin but steady. In that little room filled with the smell of roasted corn, I felt something soften inside me. "I know you'll find your footing again," she said. "Sometimes, people just need someone to remind them. Stand up, do not kneel." Her words weren't loud, but they lingered longer than the radio's hum. In the corner, the old sewing machine still sat on its wooden table. I walked over, brushing a thin layer of dust from its metal frame. A memory surfaced. I was 17. Prom night. The dress I'd dreamed of tore during the final fitting. My mother only said, "You should have been more careful." But Evelyn came over and stayed all night, sewing every seam back in place. I remember the light weak and yellow, but warm. She never said, "Don't be sad." She just asked, "Do you want it an inch longer, or keep it as is?" Now, seeing the needle stuck in the fabric, I finally understood. That night, she hadn't just mended a dress. She had mended a small piece of my faith. I turned back to the table and pushed the envelope toward her. "I can't take this money, but I'll remember what you said." She squinted, smiling faintly. "No need to remember, just live like yourself." I nodded, my voice quiet. "You just gave me something priceless, the memory of who I am." She placed her hand over mine, squeezing gently. In the warm light, I noticed the small scars on her knuckles, like everything she'd ever done. Simple, but enduring. When I left room 3B, dawn hadn't fully broken yet. The river breeze was cold, and mist still clung to the pavement. I sat on the steps and pulled out my phone. On the screen was a single name: Harland, my attorney. I drew a deep breath and pressed call. His voice came through the speaker. "Low and steady, Whitford. Calling this early, what's going on?" I looked toward the horizon, where the first blush of pink spread across the clouds. "We're going to begin," I said. I'm ready now. There was a pause. Then he replied, Understood. I'll prepare everything. The call ended. I slipped the phone into my pocket and lifted my head. The sky was slowly turning to light. Early morning. A thin layer of mist clung to the steel railing in the back courtyard of my apartment. The air was cold, carrying a faint trace of chlorine from the pool nearby. I stood under the awning, my thumb tracing a slow circle on the phone screen before pressing call. The phone rang 3 times. Marcus's voice came through the same mix of grogginess and irritation. Hello, what now? Lena, I lowered my voice, letting my breath sound thinner and weaker than usual. Agree. I'll sign. I just need $20,000 in cash today. I have to stop the rent payment before noon. There was a shuffle. Then Haley's sharp, sugary tone cut in Smart Girl. 10 o'clock Notary Express. At the strip mall on Rivers Road. Beyond time. I paused for a beat, letting silence hang just long enough to sound hesitant. A few brown sparrows rustled through the mulch nearby. Their tiny feet scraped softly. I knew they were enjoying this. When I sign, you'll hand over the money right away. Marcus laughed, slapping something, probably his jacket pocket. Right away. Cash. Don't pull any stunts. Lena. I hung up and leaned against the brick wall. The cold seeped through my thin sweater, but my head burned with a single, clear line of thought. On the step near my foot was a shallow puddle reflecting the gray sky. My own face stared back calm, flat as still water. They had taken the bait. The strip mall sprawled low against the road. A hair salon, a check cashing place, and a wig shop glowing in sickly green light. Notary Express sat wedged in the middle, its flickering sign missing the O. Inside, the air conditioner blew dry. Recycled air that smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet. Marcus sat sprawled on a plastic chair, greasy jacket. Brand new sneakers too white to be real. Haley wore a tight pastel pink outfit, acrylic nails gleaming like small blades. The notary was a bleary-eyed man who looked at his phone more than at us. I stepped inside, suppressing a wave of disgust. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Each flicker made the stack of papers on the desk flash like a warning. I made my hand tremble slightly as I pulled out a chair. Let me look through it first. Haley gave a thin smile, her cheap perfume hanging heavy in the air. Oh, honey, you wouldn't understand it anyway. Just sign and take your cash. The grown-ups already handled everything. I said nothing. I bent over the papers. The squeak of the plastic chair echoed like a metronome counting down secrets. The first page bore a bold, warped title, a cheap printer's Times New Roman disclaimer of interest. My heartbeat stayed steady, but a chill ran up my neck. It wasn't a sale agreement. No purchase price. No consideration. Not a single line about an exchange. Just a renunciation permanent. I flipped to the back. There was another sheet thinner paper. Rough-edged. Clearly torn from a cheap pad. Handwritten across the top in marker loan agreement. $20,000. The terms read Marcus lends Lena $20,000. At 20% annual interest. To be repaid within 12 months. The ink still smelled fresh. Haley tapped her nails on the table. Talk. Done yet? Sweetheart, I looked up, keeping my voice uncertain. So, if I sign this means I'm selling my share of the house. Right. If this is about selling the house, I said softly. Then why does the title say, Disclaimer of Interest? Haley's jaw twitched before she lifted her chin. That's just legal language. You wouldn't get it. Sign it. Marcus jumped in. Impatient. Stop wasting time. You want the money. Don't you? I nodded faintly, staring at the frayed edge of the paper, thinking about how lightly they treated everything, even the law itself. The notary handed me a blue pen, its tip crusted with dried ink. I held it off-center, so the sweat on my fingers made it slip. The pen fell and rolled under the table. I bent down. In a single breath, my thumb slid across my phone screen inside my jacket pocket. The red recording icon blinked on. When I sat back up, I baited them again. Just to be clear, once I sign, I get $20,000 for my share of the house, right? Haley rolled her eyes, snapping each word like glass. Right. Sign this. Get $20,000. Hurry up. I let a pause stretch. The AC hissed. A paper cup clattered in the trash, and the notary's pen clicked against the desk. Every sound slipped neatly into the mic, crisp, deliberate. Marcus pulled out a fat envelope, waving it with a grin. Money's right here, but you sign first. The smell of old cash and sweat hit my nose, the scent of people who thought everything had a price. I slipped to the middle of the packet, to a harmless page labeled initials. Not the signature page, just an acknowledgement box. I scrawled my initials, handshaking, just enough to sell the role of nervous little sister. The ink line broke near the end, intentional. A fracture I'd recognize later in any copy. Done, yet Marcus leaned forward, still staring at the paper. I murmured, my tone soft and timid. When I finish signing, I get the full cash right now. Correct. Marcus slapped his pocket, the sound of bills rustling. Yes. Right now. Haley snatched the stack. Give it here. Let's notarize it. As I closed the folder, I subtly slid one photocopy free the title page with disclaimer of interest. I handed the rest to Haley. She didn't count. The notary stamped a random sheet with a dull thunk. I hid a smile. Can I take this photocopy home to read again tonight? I just don't want to misunderstand anything. Haley snapped. Whatever. Tomorrow morning. We finalize. Don't be late. They thought I was stupid. Fine. I needed them too. The midday sun blazed off the windshield, the smell of hot plastic rising around me. I played the recording. Haley's voice came through the speakers. Crisp and clean. Right? Sign this. Get $20,000. Hurry up. Perfect. I photographed the title page, zoomed in on the small break in my initials, and uploaded both files into a folder labeled Anchor, Evidence. My heartbeat was steady. My hands no longer shook. I called Harland. He picked up on the second ring. Whitford, I have audio. The title page, and evidence of them flashing the cash before the so-called transaction. Outside, a truck screeched to a stop, burning rubber in the air. And a witness, I added, the notary glued to his phone the whole time. Harlan chuckled. Dry and low. Perfect. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. 40th floor. Invite them to clarify the misunderstanding. I'll invite them. I hung up and exhaled slowly, through the windshield. Charleston's sky was a piercing blue, and I rested my forehead on the steering wheel, not from exhaustion, but to memorize this feeling. Everything is finally back in place. I texted Marcus tomorrow. 1000 a.m. Buckhead Tower. Conference room 40. Come sign the official version. Don't be late. 3 dots appeared and vanished. A minute later, okay. I leaned back. Eyes closed. A soft breeze swept across the parking lot, making the flag on the pole snap faintly. Beside me, the photocopy of disclaimer of interest lay neatly on the passenger seat, a silver hook glinting in the light. I zipped my bag and tucked it deep inside. Tonight, I would sleep well. Tomorrow morning, they'd wake up in a room unlike any they'd ever entered, all glass. Thick carpet, dark wood, and rules that operated on a level they'd never even begun to understand. 10 a.m. Tomorrow. 40th floor. I whispered. Invite them. To end the misunderstanding. The elevator stopped with a dry ping. When the doors slid open, A gust of cold air spilled out, scented faintly with oak and metal polish. I stood still for a moment, watching the hallway stretch out before me, carpeted in gray wool. Each step disappeared into a silence that cost hundreds of dollars per square foot. Beyond the glass wall, Charleston unfolded in pale silver light. The Ashley River glittered like a ribbon of sequins. And far away, rooftops flashed back the morning sun like shards of breathing mirrors. Harland Pierce walked beside me, leather briefcase in hand. He didn't speak, only gave a small nod. When the final glass door opened, I saw the long conference table of dark walnut polished to a muted gleam. Like the surface of a still lake, Marcus entered first, dressed in a black suit, his red tie as bright and sharp as a warning sign. Haley followed, her perfume sharp enough to sting, heels clicking like small knives across the carpet. My mother came last, clutching her purse so tightly that her knuckles whitened. They walked in like guests, but I knew exactly who paid the power bill for this room. I was already seated at the head of the table, my back straight, palms resting on the cool surface. The room was so bright there was no shadow left for anyone to hide in. Harland adjusted his glasses. "We're all here," he said. "This meeting concerns the property transfer of River's Edge." Marcus gave a short laugh, dropping a folder onto the table. "She already signed. Nothing complicated about it." My mother interjected, voice soft and trembling. "Lena, sweetheart, I hope you're not turning a family matter into a tragedy." Haley smirked. "It's just paperwork." "Really? Don't be so dramatic. Do you still not understand what an agreement means?" I unscrewed my water bottle cap. The faint click was the only sound in the room. Harland spoke steadily, his lawyer's cadence sharp and precise, a thin blade drawn slowly. The table, I thought, was perfect for talking about fairness. He placed a small black speaker in the center and pressed a button. A soft click, and then Haley's voice filled the room syrupy sweet. Then acid sharp. "Sign it. Take 20,000 and stay out of the family business." No one moved. No chair creaked. The air conditioning hummed steadily in the background. Marcus blinked once. Slowly, my mother leaned forward slightly, lips pressed tight, caught between speaking and swallowing her words. "Sound doesn't lee." Harland stopped the playback, then slid out a photocopied page. "This is the document they coerced her to sign." The title reads, "Disclaimer of Interest." There's no clause of sale, no purchase price, only renunciation of inheritance and a loan sheet for $20,000 at 20% interest. A fraudulent transaction, created under deliberate misrepresentation. Marcus's jaw tightened. She recorded that illegally. It won't hold up. Harland's tone stayed calm. In South Carolina, one-party consent applies, and beyond the recording, we have handwriting variants captured at the exact moment she dropped her pen. Haley flipped her hair, attempting a laugh that came out brittle. "This is exhausting. Let my lawyer see it." Harland opened another folder, spreading glossy copies, stamps, and time seals across the table. "Here," he said, tapping one corner. She signed at the precise second. The pen was removed, time-stamped. The building's security footage confirms it. Haley snatched the pages, her crimson nails trembling. "This is a draft. It means nothing." Harland looked up, unblinking. "And this is the certified version filed with audio, Demis dump, and photographic evidence. If you refuse a civil resolution, we'll proceed with criminal charges for fraud and document falsification." Marcus stared at me, his eyes narrowing. "What do you want? Ink is black and white, but conscience is always gray." I set down my water bottle and met his eyes. "I want you to sit and listen to the rest." I reached into my bag and laid a slim envelope on the table. The light caught the printed words, "Private banking statement." Harland turned it slightly so they could see the figure in the top corner. $45. 4 million USD. My mother gasped. Haley froze, mouth open. Marcus laughed the hollow laugh of a man with nothing left to hold on to. $2,000 had been the question. $45 million was my answer. You tried to sell me my share for $20,000. I said, I agreed not because I needed it. But to pay off an old lesson, real value never lives on paper. Harland unfolded 2 final documents. His voice composed. To avoid criminal proceedings, both parties will sign this full transfer of inheritance rights to Ms. Ron's, Lena Whitmore. Total consideration, $20,000. This is a one-time offer. Haley shot to her feet. No way. My mother placed a trembling hand on Marcus's arm. Sign it. His hand shook. Sweat darkened the edge of his cuff. Haley's glare cut across the table. But she had nothing left to throw. They signed. The ink spread slowly and clearly, carving permanence into the page. Harland withdrew a banker's check $20,000 and laid it on the table. It gleamed under the light like a blade. Haley snared. Are you happy now? Alone? On your mountain of money? I took a sip of water. I'm quiet enough. Happiness can wait. Harland closed the folder. Complete. They turned to leave. When Marcus's hand reached the door handle, I said, one more thing. I slid another envelope across the table. Tomorrow, River's Edge will be renovated. The sign in front will read, The Althea and Evelyn House. A place for girls who were once taught they weren't worth anything. Haley's breath caught. I cut her off gently. Don't worry. Not a cent of yours will go into it. I have other sources. I wasn't taking from them. I was taking back what they'd tried to replace. Marcus opened the door. 3 silhouettes vanished into the bright white corridor. My mother hesitated, as if she wanted to say something, but lowered her head and walked away. The room went still. Only Harland and I remained. He asked quietly, Do you want me to file with the county today? Hold it. I said, They just need to know I can, not that I will. He smiled faintly. That's why they lost. They only ever knew how to will. I walked to the window. Charleston lay below like a black and white photograph, serene. Cold. And beautiful. I texted Evelyn. Are you free at noon? I want you to be the first to turn the key. Message sent. I slipped the phone away and stepped out of the conference room, leaving behind the elegant silence of victory. Tomorrow, when the sign, The Althea and Evelyn House, is raised, the first car to stop won't carry the Whitmore name. It will carry the girls once taught that silence was survival. And that night, when my mother texts, You've shamed us, I will simply reply, No. Mom, I just silenced those who never listened. Morning mist lingered over Charleston. Cool air threaded with early sunlight. The steady hum of drills carried on the breeze mixed with the scent of fresh paint and new timber. I stood outside the fence, watching as the sign, The Althea and Evelyn House, was fastened to the old brick wall. The old door creaked, grateful for new hands. What was once a faded, broken house now gleamed a soft cream. Beneath the porch roof, pots of yellow chrysanthemums, Evelyn's favorites, were in full bloom. I touched the edge of the sign, feeling the engraved letters beneath my fingertips. It wasn't just a name. It was a promise. Evelyn arrived on the early bus, carrying her worn brown tote bag. I stepped forward to greet her, my chest light, as if a quiet debt had been repaid. Some gifts aren't wrapped in paper, they're wrapped in memory. I handed her the key to the penthouse suite, the top floor of the new home. Her hand trembled. Does the elevator finally work now? She asked softly. I smiled. Yes. And no one will have to sleep on the sofa anymore. Her eyes glistened, catching the light pouring through the open glass doors. The iron gate swung open. 2 young women entered, dragging their suitcases, one with cropped hair and a battered backpack, the other holding an unfinished painting. Each suitcase that rolled over the threshold was a life turning a new page. The smell of cornbread drifted from the kitchen, mingling with shy laughter. Evelyn's handwritten house rule hung by the door. You don't have to be perfect here. Just be honest. Watching it all, I felt something inside me stitching itself back together. No roses. No. Champagne just peace. By noon, I sat by the second-floor window. My laptop glowed with the words, Whitmore Foundation for Women's Empowerment. Money. I'd realized. That was only fuel. Dignity was the destination. I signed funding for 3 new programs: personal finance, basic law, and career rebuilding. Harland called. Lena. The press wants a statement. I answered. They don't need my words. They'll see the result. My hands no longer shook when I signed. For the first time, I understood control isn't domination. It's responsibility. By evening, the last sunlight stretched across the wooden floor. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. You've shamed the family. I read it. Not angry, just hollow. Sometimes silence is the most perfect reply. I set the phone down. Evelyn looked at me and gave a small nod. Sometimes, she said, you have to let others have the last word so you can finally rest. I smiled. I think I've said enough for today. Dusk settled. Warm light spilled through the windows, glowing against the new sign. From the kitchen came laughter, the sound of a different kind of family, the one I chose to build. Not everyone who gives you life is the one who lifts you up, but you can become that person for someone else. I looked toward the street, where cars slowed to read the sign. In my heart, I whispered, "Thank you, Evelyn, for believing when no one else did." Tomorrow night, the house would host its first dinner. No champagne just riche. Cornbread, and the stories of those once cast aside. On the wall, a small inscription in bright metal read, "Family is where you don't have to ask permission to stay." I turned on the porch light. Charleston was quiet again. A small car stopped at the gate. A young woman with curly hair stepped out, clutching a flyer that read, "Need a place to restart." I smiled and opened the door. "Welcome home." Before we end, I'd like to ask you something. Where are you watching this from? Write your city or country below. I'd love to know how many hearts are listening right now. Was there something in Lena's story that made you pause? A line, a moment, or just the feeling that finally someone understood you? Hit like and subscribe so I can share more stories that touch the heart and help you see life differently. And if you believe that family is who lifts you up, not who breaks you down, subscribe. Now we have many more stories to tell. Comment below with a moment when you rebuilt your own life, or the person who helped you stand again. Maybe your story will be the one that gives someone else their strength back. Finally, if you know someone who once said, "You're not good enough," send them this video. Not to prove anything, but to let them see you're still here, and you're still standing.